Welcome back to the Elevate Your Best podcast. My name is Michael Danklefs.
And I am Bruno Martins. And today we are going to talk about how I am enough. Not actually I, right, Michael? But we are enough. And this is an affirmation. Very useful. I am enough.
Absolutely. And the phrase I am is one of the most powerful things that human beings say, because what we actually say after it has a huge impact on shifting and changing our identity. And I believe it's rapid transformational therapy. I can't remember her name at this point. It's one of the meditations that she does. One of the guided work that she does is around I am enough. And it's a struggle for many of us. And it shows up in many different ways of us feeling like we're not good enough, we're not fast enough, we're not strong enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not whatever that enough is. It tends to be whenever we're trying to prove to ourselves and others that we're enough. Especially for people who are super high achievers, it tends to be one of those guiding principles on why they do so much, because they don't ever feel like no matter what they do, that they're enough. And I know for me, that showed up as me not saying what's on my mind. Showed up for me not really getting to or experiencing the things I want in my life because I didn't think I was worthy enough. Didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't think I was strong enough. I didn't think I was compassionate enough in order to really embrace and enjoy and feel deserving of what was actually coming in my life. And in doing so, then I wasn't heard. So I downplayed myself far more than what I give myself credit for. Now that we've talked about this in the past, is I'm a big person. I'm over 6 feet tall. And in so that also brings a lot of energy. And I held back because I didn't want to hurt people, literally and energetically and emotionally. And in doing so, I dampened my light around that and not showed up fully as myself. What I really want to talk about today is that every opportunity we have an opportunity, every moment we have an opportunity to embrace who we are and share the fullness of ourselves as authentically and as realistically as possible. So the person I was thinking of earlier, whenever I was talking about the rapid transformational therapy, is Marissa Peer. She's actually now a world-renowned hypnotherapist who has worked around this idea of I am enough. And that tends to be the core for so many people as they struggle, is not feeling that they're enough. So they're trying to fill that enoughness with something outside. I am.
I thought that this Marissa Peer was the one from Unlimited Abundance, but it's not. That one is Christine Marie Sheldon. So Marissa Peer, she has some quests on Mind Valley, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I think, Michael, that everybody has this experience. This is one of those very common experiences. Am I enough? I mentioned this on the podcast before as well. I am noticing on the upbringing of my niece, it is a great opportunity for me to take a look on how things are happening. I'm very observative at this moment of my life. And I noticed that there are some things that we teach without realizing, and they lead the person into serious problems when we have it. For example, when I got in my mother's house and my niece is there, there are some gifts that were bought between the last visit and when I'm getting there right now. And then my sister makes her show me everything. She show him your bicycle, show him like your puzzle. And then she comes and she shows me things. And for me, watching this, it's my sister showing her into behavior, which is actually what teaches. You need other people's approval. When you got something new, other people might need to see and recognize it and congratulate you because of the things you have.
And I know that you've actually brought this up in the past a couple of times. And I would agree with you that this idea of having to showcase your things to have value in yourself, I very much disagree with. That isn't a way for me to have someone celebrate their life. by the things that you've accomplished. It may be one on several different factors that you can celebrate of, I've saved up the last year to buy this thing that it really is going to make me happy because of this and this. So I get, wanting to share that excitement with someone, but if it's always having to be the things rather than who you are, what you've accomplished, to celebrate your wins with people, that's something different. Oh, you've learned how to do a backflip. Let's have you practice that again and show your uncle you doing a backflip. That's celebrating
that's
a skill and
different.
ability. It is a different thing. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of finding out what you celebrate with someone. And that is a pillar of my coaching practice, is this celebration thing. And what I hear your concern is that if you only celebrate the material things, then it then becomes a materialistic person.
I'm actually saying that in this experience, my sister, I believe, is teaching my niece to seek for external approval. That's what I'm seeing. Oh, she needs to validate herself through materialism as well. Oh, when I get something new, this is something that she's learning as something necessary to survive, because at this point in life, we forget that people are growing and learning. Like, we are not very conscious up to 7 years. We are programming ourselves on what we need to survive. And if she's learning to survive, I need to have new things, and I need to show people need to validate me. And if I don't have new things, and worst of that, Michael, is that when she's about 10 or 15, particularly, this is a great shock, because suddenly nobody cares for what you have. Like, people care, but people care for what you have. If you have something, they like it, but it's not on the same level as before, where everything you had, people give you a party and it was awesome. And why am I saying all this? Because it leads us into this thing of I am enough. It not only the materialistic part of it, but the external approval of it. And I believe that there is a lot of the teaching, and I believe that there is a lot of the teaching that we have today in our education, things like that. This is just one example. That's what I'm trying to say. This is just one example, and there are several actions that we are having around our children that communicates them in practical level, in experiences. Perhaps you are not enough.
Gotcha. So it's that having to justify that you're enough by what you have, rather than who you are. And that too is why I wanted to touch on this particular subject around I'm enough, is my perception, my belief, my premise around this is everyone has an opinion and it's valuable. It actually provides something else to the mix, because your life experience is different than my life experience. And until I can actually understand your perspective and your opinion, it makes it much more difficult for me to really empathize with where you're at. I can make up that, oh, Bruno's in Brazil, so of course he knows nothing about capitalism. That's an assumption. I can say many different things. I can make all kinds of stuff up. I can make assumptions about that. And for me, it's far clearer to really embrace the idea of talking with someone to really find out where they're at. But this whole idea of I am enough really is showed up for me on many different occasions. And once again, like I said, I'm bigger in stature, but I want to be known for what I can say, what I can think, what I can process, what I can fix, more so than what I can lift, what I can pick up and move. Not my physical strength, but my strength of character. So knowing that I'm enough just the way I am, maybe actually one reason why I am not at peak physical condition, because I don't want people to assume that's actually what I'm destined for. That's what my purpose is in life, is to physically move things. I want to be able to help people transform their lives. I want to be able to solve problems with my intellect and my emotional intelligence, more so than my physical prowess.
And just to close on that initial thought of what we teach, this is something that we teach as well, putting people into little tiny boxes. Oh, Michael is strong. 6 something foot tall. So that's what he's useful for. You mentioned that in a previous episode. And it's good that you feel this enoughness into searching other things. Because one of the key things of being enough, I don't know if it's the best time to mention this, but it's the time it popped out for me. It is being resourceful. There is something about being resourceful. We're going to talk about other information that might be more proper if you are changing from someone that is actually feeling not enough into someone that feels enough. But here's the thing, feeling resourceful, it's something more, let's say, advanced, because it's some sort of versatility that we have. What is being resourceful? Being resourceful is about you being able to figure out things, you being able to find information, we being able to get something done. Being resourceful is like finding the path, finding the solution. Even though we didn't have it before, we can find it. And not only that, but when a person starts to become resourceful, they also become, because what we learn is like learning a bike. When you learn it, people say, oh, you don't forget. And it might be that you have a hard time when you spend too many years not writing it, but you quickly get ahead of it and you go. So being resourceful is more when we start acquiring resources, they stack together and they don't, it's like learning a bike. We don't lose them easily. So the more resources you have, more resourceful you become by essence. Does it make sense, Michael?
So I get where you're going with this, and somewhat what I'm hearing in this is being resourceful it's a skill that requires you to practice it. And that this idea of being resourceful is a matter of finding the solutions. And in many ways, there's two aspects of resourcefulness to me. One is confidence to try, to act, to seek, to move and move towards an action. So that's one part of it. Resourcefulness is the courage to do it, but it's also then the curiosity that goes along with.
I think that it's important to say it's the courage for the chance, because it's like Shakespeare says on his poem, I believe it's Hamlet, is like to sleep perchance to dream. Like you go to sleep for the chance that you have to dream. That's the objective of the.
But this is more so of, I agree partially with that. It's more so that, like, you could just, we've talked about it on many occasions of, the world is happening to me, it's victim consciousness, and I'm stuck with this. Resourcefulness is that next phase. It's when you're manifesting things, and it takes courage to move from one to the next. It's easy to say that happened to me, I'm the victim here. But when we start really looking at being resourceful is when we're moving into the second, third, and fourth levels of consciousness. We're actually having things happening through us or as us. It's more really starting off with the second level of consciousness of things happening by us, when we actually have the courage to take the step to move towards it, rather than sitting back and saying, I've never been good enough at that before, why would I be good enough now? That's the paradigms. That is the discouragement that comes up. And then the second part then is the curiosity to be open to what is possible. Because if I'm instead stuck on this is the only way that's going to get done, and that doesn't work, resourcefulness is widening that stream. It's actually looking at other possibilities, other routes to get there. If I thought that the only way for me to get from here to New York was to walk there, that's a 5.5-hour drive, is like a 3-day trek. If my mind is stuck on, I have to walk there because whatever reason that is, that's going to be really difficult for me, especially with the weather the way it is here in New England right now, rather than being open to the possibility that there's also a train, there's also renting a car, there's also asking a friend to take me. There's other options here that are possible depending on the other resources that I have. If money isn't the resource that I'm lacking, I can take some of those things. If it's actually more time that's an issue, and I've got plenty of time to do it, maybe I will hitchhike or go another route. So resourcefulness is also taking inventory of what resources you have available and what you're willing to invest in order to get there. So I think that it's really looking at the possibilities. So resourcefulness is open to it and courageous enough in order to act on it. Because otherwise,
And you
those
also,
resources, if I keep the resources only on the shelf over here and I leave them
yeah.
there, it doesn't matter how resourceful I am.
And you also mentioned, Michael, being able to get a car, taking up a train, and this is about productivity. We can increase our productivity by using tools, and going by car is just more productive. And everything has to do with energy. It's all about energy and the transformation of energy, and about the outcome as well. Because if I wish to, if the view is nice, if the path is pleasurable, maybe not pleasurable because sometimes it's actually painful, but if it's worth it, I can actually hike through it and do it on another way. It might look like it's less productive, but it's actually more productive because the productivity depends on the outcome. And another thing in what you mentioned that it's interesting to me is, oh, I can't have my resources on the shelf, but as I can also I cannot have them as well all in my hands. And this is something that I'm learning. I actually got that information before. And right now, doing all the things that we are doing here on the business, I am learning that we need to, when I use an object, like for example, these keys that are on the table right now, I need to get them on the proper place and store them. If the resource that you are using, when you use the resource, it is in your hand. It is good when we are like doing a presentation. Oh, this bottle of water. Oh, where is the water? Doesn't make sense, but this bottle of water. Now I have a bottle of water. But when I finish talking about the bottle of water, if I continue talking about the moon and the sky and the light and everything else that is out there, suddenly somebody new gets into the podcast, or it's useless information. Why is this bottle of water here? So now I get this bottle of water and I put it away. So it's very important for us to know what are our resources, where they are, take them out when we need to use them. And once we use them, don't leave them out there on the open, but get them and put back where they are supposed to be, because that's the place where they are stored. That's the proper place for them. They are more useful for us right there where we know where they are when we need them.
So as we're getting a little bit off the path here, but we'll circle back with this. So I heard two pillars show up in what you talked about. So one is that looking at what your commitment is towards. If you are committed to accomplish that thing, resourcefulness will allow you to get there in the most efficient way possible from what you know at this time. But it starts with the commitment. You sell yourself on the idea that this is going to get done regardless of what it's going to take. But that second piece that you talked about is with those resources, having them in the right place and available when and where you need them, is preparation. It's knowing what you need for the next leg, what you know that you need to move forward, which takes us slowing down. It takes us to a place of thinking about what the next step is, or what our potential next steps are going to be, so we can be well prepared for that. If I'm going to say that I'm going to go to New York again, and I say, okay, I'm going to go as I am right now. I don't have shoes on. I don't have a jacket. I'm just going to start heading towards New York, and because my commitment to get there, but I didn't prepare to go there, to bring the proper tools, to bring the proper resources. That's going to generally come from because I don't trust myself enough to prepare all the things ahead of time to ensure that I can get there. That's another negative outcome potentially for not feeling like I'm enough, is that I won't prepare for myself to succeed. Instead, I prepare for myself to fail. So that's the part that I also want to make sure that we highlight here. And when we're preparing for ourselves to fail, it comes because we feel like that's what we deserve. We're not valuing ourselves enough to think that is accomplishable.
I would say that maybe it's not even like what we deserve that the person feel, because I am familiar with that. The thing is more, this is what we identify receiving. Oh, this is what we get. This is what we get. Oh, how come I can go? I can never go to New York. I'm not this kind of person. I don't know how to put the things together. Like we identify with the thing. Not, it's not I deserved. It's more, oh, this is my life.
So I would say that there's some of that that's an identity, but that once again is taking an evaluation of ourselves to say that we deserve this because this is the work we put in. This is who I am, so I deserve to get this outcome. And that is accepting that this is who I am, this is what I get. And maybe the reason why I'm actually stuck on this New York thing is that I would love to be in New York right now. There's actually some people who are actually meeting in New York right now that I'd love to be there for.
What is
I'd
that
love to meet
meaning
them.
like? It's
It is the Lifebook community. Alex Serdu,
oh,
who's one of the community managers, is actually here in New York, and some of the Lifebook leaders are actually meeting them in New York
mhm,
City. And I would love to be there. I had prior commitments. And I'm making the choice to be here because this is valuable for me. But part of my head is actually still in New York. Could
oh,
I, if I would have had a week worth of time to make that happen, I probably could have. I would be down there. I would have been parked and meeting there. But it wasn't, I didn't give myself enough time. There was not enough time for me to line that up to make that happen.
mhm,
I also had other commitments for the rest of the weekend as well. So it's one of those things of, do I get what I deserve? And
mhm,
for some people, and I would actually say in many ways that when we look at the law of attraction, we really talk about we attract what we are, not what we want. That kind of comes back to that deserving concept. So if we feel like we deserve A, because we've done the work, we start attracting that we're focusing on. But if we say I want it, but don't feel like we deserve it, it's weird how it always seems to elude us. And that really comes back to that space of I am enough. I've earned the right to have that in my life.
and
I
I deserve
deserve
it.
that.
Yeah. Now deserving makes more sense to me to be used like, oh, I deserve it. And I noticed this is something that I started saying, like, for example, uh, I always come back like but it's okay. It's like my life. I have met this beautiful woman, Morgana, her name. And a friend of mine was like, hey, did you saw the girl? We were in the bar, like, did you saw the girl with the gym clothes? She was dancing there. I was like, no, like, didn't saw it and didn't mind, just went to do my business. After 10 minutes going around, I got to a point where I looked to the right and I was like, oh, I see the girl with the gym clothes now. She was beautiful. She is beautiful. She's a friend of mine now. And we were kissing later after this in the same night. And I looked at her, Michael, and I said, I deserve it. Because I was so nervous, Michael. I was so anxious. And I was like, dude, what is happening? What is happening? And then I say to myself, I deserve it. And I sometimes say those things, and I notice that people feel like I'm asking, oh, but I deserve it. Will you not do this for me? And it's more like an affirmation that I do to myself every time that I'm questioning if I actually deserve the experience that I'm having or not. I'm like, I deserve it. That is a loud conversation again. It's a new person that came here. Just a second.
So the biggest challenge with this whole like I deserve this concept is really embracing what we feel we deserve from not from an ego place, not letting ego drive this definition of what I deserve. And that's in the positive and the negative. And the ego tends to be what gets engaged in that space of I deserve to be treated with respect. I'm a raging asshole, but I deserve to be treated with respect. That's your ego talking. Or in the reverse of that of there's no way I deserve to be here because of this mistake or this challenge or this is where I grew up or this is the places that I am. It can go both ways. So the idea that I'm talking about is let's shrink down that definition to what is in that center space, that heart space, that soul space of I've done the work. I deserve to be here. I am enough. just the way I am. I don't need to take another program. I don't need to lose 500 pounds. I don't need to do something else. I don't need to do anything to be enough. I am enough already. I can certainly impact the way that my life is by the actions that I take. But the phrase that comes to mind as I was talking about this was this idea of, I am a human being, not a human doing. I'm enough just the way I am. And to actually say that to yourself can be really hard. Saying into the mirror, looking at yourself in the face and say, you are enough just the way you are.
And
It is a
it's
really
interesting.
it's a powerful exercise.
Sorry, Michael, but it's interesting how a simple exercise like that is actually very useful. If we look at ourselves in the mirror, we are seeing ourselves, and our subconscious mind is processing it. And when we start to associate like a vision, an image, a meaning of enoughness, resourcefulness, of I deserve nice things, like the deserve part is not so well communicated in my eyes. But when we start to say I deserve, and we think the things we deserve, and we are looking ourselves in the mirror, we are creating that identification. We are not only accepting who we are, we go beyond of accepting who we are. We start to shape who we are. We are enough. And this is something that it might sound illogical to the person that is starting their journey. How can I shape myself? But we can shape ourselves like someone can sculpt marble. We can just go there, and through affirmations. We have an episode talking about affirmations and this kind of exercise. And we might not be enough at some point, but we do not only this, of course, but other things, we take other actions, we will become enough. And looking ourselves in the mirror and saying that, identifying with that, is very important, very key. Michael,
Right.
there is something I would like to mention right now that you were speaking and I remember. I remember a friend, actually, it is a friend. I remember she was a very interesting girl, and she did some exercises, like she had an interesting life. She walked in bike and everything. But when we got together, I realized that she wouldn't speak, Michael. And that when she spoke, because sometimes I ask her questions and things like that, when she spoke so low, in a low tone, that I wouldn't understand. And I would ask her again, what did you say? That I got myself asking several times every day that we met, what did you say? What did you say? And I noticed that sometimes she was starting to say something, and then she gave up and just let it go. And later I got to know her better. I realized that she had a very abusive father. Like, I don't know the details, but I know that he demeaned her very much. And even today he gets to her home and tells her horrible things. And I realize, oh, she doesn't feel like what she has to say has meaning, has importance. And thus, she doesn't feel like she has the need to say, or doesn't value even finishing it.
That's exactly a perfect example of what I'm talking about, is this idea of saying something so softly that people can't hear it because they don't feel they deserve to be heard. And that has been me. I relate to that, of not saying something because what good is it going to do by me saying something in the situation? And that can be in a situation where someone else is being demeaned, bullied, or racist comments are being made. But what do I have to say about this? Of course, they're more powerful than me. They're more important than me. So I can't stand up to them. And what I've found over and over again with the people who I've actually put on a pedestal of being an authority or being a leader or whatever, that they have just as many hangups as the rest of us. They have just as many challenges as the rest of us. And embracing our journey is for me to embrace my journey. And part of that for me is helping support others on their journey so they can get back to their process, their unfolding, their best life, not what I think is the best for them. but it's for me to be curious enough to ask the questions for someone to come to their own conclusions about what this journey is for them. That's where I like to play and see somebody say, wow, that worked so well. Thank you. Not because I projected my stuff, but because I was curious enough to help them get to the core of what they are, what they're being, and from that place of being, what they're doing.
And I dove too deep into that and forgot to tie it up with the enoughness, the I am enough side of things. But how meaningful can a person feel when they cannot even be heard? They don't feel like they are heard. How meaningful can a person feel? How can they feel they are enough if their voice is never heard? Like you were saying, if they don't feel meaningful, you use other word, like it was that the meaning, I believe, but you use other word.
So it's really the value of their ideas, their opinions, their perspective. And how do you get there? For me, whenever I'm working with someone as a coach, it is really asking the questions of coming back to the moment whenever they made that agreement, like we've talked about in the past, is that agreement of my voice doesn't matter, and shifting the perspective on that. Because at some point in time, maybe through a succession of actions, maybe from one instance, maybe from a traumatic life growing up with a father who was overbearing and demeaning, that they finally gave up and said, what I have to say doesn't have meaning because this person who is so important in my life doesn't feel I'm valued, so why would anyone else? There's so many different paths that people get to that. And where I like to work with is helping someone change that story. And sometimes it is a deep traumatic experience. And that's where I have to pull back, in that I'm not trained in order to work someone through trauma. There are people out there who are perfectly trained to do that. Where I can play with is when someone has gotten to a point where they're ready to change that story. When they're ready to say, I can't figure out why this is still here. This is all the work I've done. And sometimes it's about pulling that one thread that someone forgot to pull and then reframing that. You know, my voice, I know at this point in my life, is to ask questions. It is to ask probing questions, to ask challenging questions, to ask transformational questions, so that someone can come up with their answers, so that they can then live the next best version of their life. It's helping somebody pack their emotional bag to make sure that they can actually take on this next trail of their life, this next journey of their life.
Finding a new role, right? Like giving a new meaning to themselves. And again, we come back to identification, like the law of resonance. And this new role is very important. We can be anything, and including enough. We can decide to be enough. It seems odd, it seems wrong. I cannot decide just to be something, but deciding is the first step into getting there. If we prepare, when we prepare for a travel, if Michael get prepared to go to New York, it's because he's deciding. He might not actually have decided, but it is in the process of decision. But perhaps he already decided, I'll go there. I'll go to travel. And then I don't know exactly where I go, but let's prepare. I decided to travel. That was a decision. So there is a decision to become enough, to be happy, to be productive, to be more effective. It is all a decision. Oh, but I don't know how to become more effective. Then we learn. But first we decide.
Right. And that's when we start using our resources to get there, to accomplish that, and tapping into, if it is using the knowledge resources, maybe it's using the people resources, maybe it's using our influence resources, because we all have something that we've actually been cultivating for a really long time. And sometimes it's our dignity, sometimes it's our pride, sometimes it's our knowledge, sometimes it's our physical strength. There's something that we've been cultivating for some period of time. And that then becomes the currency by which we can move forward, when we can invest that as a resource into that commitment once we've decided to commit to it. And it's this strange challenge of the decision is really important. Yes. The commitment is also really important and requires us to be prepared to make that commitment, knowing what's possible, deciding where we're going to go, and then commit to the path that we're going to take to get there, and then using our resources and how to get it. So it's this idea of being enough too is, it's not always necessarily something that may not be just snapping your fingers and then I am enough. And sometimes if we're open to it, maybe that is all it takes. Maybe it just requires us to make that decision and then our life turns around. But if my first thought always is, I can't just wish that into existence and just snap my fingers and now I'm enough, then of course, that's a belief. It's a premise statement that is holding you back. What if it was possible to make the decision that I'm enough, and that completely changes the trajectory for your life?
And not leaving to the side to say that all decisions, they need to be backed up by action. Deciding to go to New York and never buying a ticket or never putting gas into the car doesn't take you far, but the decision needs to takes us into action, into taking action.
So instead, in this particular case, yes, I'm not going to be going today. I made the conscious decision that I had prior commitments, so that decision was made. However, I can then choose something different for the future. If I want to actually not have something like that happen in the last minute, I need to prepare something and plan it for far enough in advance so that people like me who have a full schedule can make something like that happen. And I've already started the ball rolling on that. So it's learn from that moment and then decide to do something differently. And I know that I can pull that off, that I can accomplish that, because I've decided that I'm enough to pull that off. Partly it is that I have evidence that I've been able to do it in the past. That certainly helps, and is actually part of my coaching process too, is many people, especially when they're high achiever, we inventory all of our failures rather than inventorying our successes. Both are places to learn a lesson. But if we only primarily focus on our failures or missing the mark, then of course, then I'm never enough because I never hit the bar. Not realizing that in between all of those missteps and those foibles and those unobtained goals, there's also generally at least as many, if not more, areas where we've succeeded. The biggest one being that if you are still on this planet, that you have succeeded in surviving everything on the planet that's tried to kill you up to this point. Everything. You're still here. That's a huge success.
I had some close calls on my life, Michael. There were some times where I could have died, and it's obvious to me. Like there was even one time that I was crossing the street, and then I got my phone in my hand, and I just stopped. Like I got close to the other side. I was still on the street. I was not on the proper place to cross, and I got close to the cars that were stopped, and I just stopped. And like a fraction of a second later, a car passed like in very high speed, and I even felt the wind like he passed so close, Michael. If I had stopped one step before, I would have at least lose a leg because he was very fast. And yes, there were many situations. We all experience many situations. Some we don't even notice. We were like a second from dying, or a minute, like I have a friend that he was talking in a bar with some friends, not actually a bar, it was a place that sells tapioca, which is a kind of food here. And he was sitting in a chair. It's a bar chair, the plastic chair that we usually have in bars here. And then he felt everybody, he went away home. And it was about 10 minutes later, a girl that committed suicide, she jumped from the building that offers shadows to this little shop. And she fell exactly on the chair that he was sitting. So sorry, Michael, you can.
So these are great examples, and us remembering that while we're still here, there's still a purpose that we have to be here. There is someone else's life who we're going to touch in one way, shape, or form as being an example of what to do, as an example of what not to do, as an inspiration for someone to change their life in one way, shape, or form, or for us to learn a lesson here in our lifetime that it's taken us generations to learn. So please know that in this moment you are enough, and you are on this process, on this journey for a reason. And each time I've found that I've stepped off that path, something pushes me back on. No. Here's your path. Let's keep going. And we're here, in my opinion, for a reason. And we're enough just the way we are to be here for the people that are here, to learn the lessons we're here to learn, and to be the best version of ourselves as we embrace it.
And not forgetting what you mentioned just now, that we need to value our experience. Like sometimes this feeling of not enoughness, it extends to our experience. Like on the episode where we were talking about the business, you helped me see that there are things that I believe that I just want people to accept them because I believe them. But it's much better for me to extend that and say, hey, I actually had an experience. I passed through this before. I remember how the path is. And because of my experience, then let's make some adjustments. And we need to value our experience, not only our experience. We need not only to value our experience, but also to, the more experience we have, of course, we'll have better ideas, better thoughts, more assertives. It's better to say this way. Our assumptions, they might have some evidence to support them, and they might have a chance to be right that makes it worth it to take a risk. So we need to learn. Those are all skills that we need to develop. We not actually need, but we can develop. And this all helps us into feeling enough. Trust that if you went through something and the other person, we might be talking to another person. If we went through an experience and the other person didn't go through the experience, we need to feel enough to recognize, no matter how that person feels, if they accept it or not, that, you know what, I've been through this. I am enough. I am valuable. My experience is valuable. I can trust it. Because sometimes the person is just talking based on assumptions. They never went through that. They don't know how the things go. And it's just like random, like I think it. And not only that, we also need to learn when we are on that other place and know when being enough also comes with knowing when we are not enough to get something done. Because now we can take a look into who can help us, who has this experience. And now we become enough, we become resourceful, because remember when Michael mentioned about resourcefulness, it also counts on our relationships, our connections. And this is being resourceful as well. And we have unlimited abundance of resources. It's not because we can do everything alone. It's exactly because we can do so much more together. So now I can call in someone that has experience. And this is something I always tell people. If you don't have experience with something and you can get someone that has experience there, invite that person. Don't feel shameful. Don't feel like they will reject you. Like feel enough to invite that person and they will come, because there will be some exchange there. That will be enough. That will be valuable.
Got it. I agree, is that experience is really important. And to me, experience is evidence. And with evidence, I'm not making an assumption. It is, however, my evidence of how it happened in the past with the environment and the resources at the time. So bringing that to any collaboration, co-elevation situation, evidence is really important to know, where did that come from? Was that an experience that you've had? How can you back that up with the facts of the situation versus I assumed that this was the answer, which all of us, me included, certainly make assumptions from time to time. My goal is to not, is instead get clarity and take action and see if I get the same results as the last time that I actually took that action, knowing full well that it may get the exact same experience in return, and it may get the exact opposite or completely different, being open to that possibility. So I do want to wrap up here with this, just because I know that we've been talking about this I am enough concept for quite a while. I want to encourage you to, we're going to be linking the resources, a video by Marissa Peer, where she talks about I am enough. I very much would encourage you to go watch that. She's a powerful speaker around this concept because she's worked with people all over the map, literally and figuratively and emotionally, that still struggle with this question of not I am enough, but am I enough as a question. And I just want to remind you that you are enough just the way you are, for your relationships, for your contribution to the world. You are enough. And I appreciate you, especially if you watch this far with us, to go into this concept. I really appreciate you for spending this time with us. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate you.
And Michael, just to wrap up on my part of things, because there is something that I was waiting to say, and that is very, I believe that is very important, is that guys, not guys, everybody, when we decide that we are enough, we increase our value to ourselves. And not only that, all this that we talk, I am enough, I'm more resourceful, all those characteristics that we can develop, skills that we can develop, they also increase our value to the community, to the people that are around us. And it is so good to feel more valuable to your family, more valuable to your peers, more valuable to your close community and to the broader community that is around us. And we can even be more valuable to the whole society, to our countries, and maybe to the world. And this is so good. It is better. And if you get to the point where you get to make a decision, if you see yourself between two doors, two paths, and you can make a decision, and you leave a situation where you can decide, am I enough or am I not enough? We are just saying that it's so much better. Decide to take the responsibility of identifying with the person that feels like they are enough and acting accordingly. It is very good, very adds with meaning, purpose, and it's awesome.
Got it. And to highlight that a little bit, I just want to bring to the forefront with that too, is no matter which route you go with this of I am enough or I am not enough, it's going to reinforce itself by reflecting back to you from the people around you. So if my identity is that I'm not enough, that's going to be how I'm going to be treated by the world around me, because the world is going to reflect back how I think about myself. So how do you want the world to react to you? Starts with how you react to you first. If I feel, know, and act as if I am enough, the world will reflect that. So keep that in mind when you're taking actions out there, is that the law of attraction repeats this over and over again. The law of resonance also repeats this over and over again, is you attract to you what you are. And the more that you believe that you're enough, that will be what you experience. So what experience do you want to have? I personally want to feel fulfilled in a space where I feel like I am enough for my partner, for the business that I work in, for my clients, for my daughter, for the communities that I serve. That's the space that I want to come to. That's the space that I work in, because that's how I want to be treated and how I choose to treat other people. So with that, thank you for your time. This is the Elevate Your Best podcast. My name is Michael Danklefs.
And I am Bruno Martins, and thank you guys. Don't forget to hit the like button, to subscribe, and next week we are here to have a new meaningful conversation that we love having. Thank you, Michael, so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you next week, where we actually take on the next big subject of how you can elevate your best. Thank you very much. Bye now.